Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, July 22nd, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about Vice President Kamala Harris and the list of Democrats who have now endorsed her publicly to win the Democratic nomination for president this coming November. Now, in just under a month, we will be seeing the Democratic National Convention taking place. In fact, in 1 month from today, Kamala Harris will be accepting the nomination for President of the United States from the Democratic Party. Now, Democrats have been very big in supporting Vice President Harris over the past 24 hours, when roughly 2 p.m. yesterday, President Biden announced via Twitter that he will be stepping down from the role of the nominee and allowing Vice President Harris to take that nomination. President Biden endorsed her, which many people, including many delegates, had pledged immediately to support her in the event that this was going to be followed through upon, that Kamala Harris was going to move up and she was going to be given this Democratic nomination, but also earned. The Democratic Party is in a position where Kamala Harris has now rejuvenated the party. We now see that $81 million have come into the Biden-Harris, or not Biden-Harris campaign, I'm so used to saying that, Harris-whoever campaign, $81 million, marking the most successful day in fundraising history for the Democratic Party, for the Republican Party, for any presidential candidate. This breaks records. $81 million over 24 hours. And in totality, Act Blue, the organization responsible for fundraising money for Democrats, has raised $112 million in the past 27 hours. $112 million today following the Biden announcement that he was withdrawing from the race and Kamala Harris would be entering in. This is a significant number. In fact, to just refresh the page, it updates every 15 minutes. $1 million more now fundraised by the Democratic Party. We are watching every 15 minutes. I imagine that was your salary. I'm sure you'd be doing a lot more than watching my YouTube videos, but 15 minutes equals $1 million at this rate. Democrats are completely getting rid of Donald Trump's advantage that he had after his assassination attempt, after the RNC. The cash-on-hand advantage that President Trump had no longer exists. But it isn't just money. This video is about the Democratic Party unifying behind Kamala Harris and what this means for this coming November. Now, if you remember anything that we talked about in relation to the election, some Democrats were very public in that they wanted an open convention. And the reason for that was because they believed that Kamala Harris would be burdened, not to use that word too much over the next 3 months, but burdened by the Biden part of the Biden-Harris administration. That President Biden was too closely associated with Vice President Harris, so she would not be able to distance herself. And while in a way that concern may be correct, at the end of the day, Kamala Harris clearly has brought something to the ticket that President Biden did not, and that is a newfound level of enthusiasm not only from donors, but from members of the left who otherwise were unapologetically anti-Biden. Think about the smaller progressive groups. They use this article as a more niche focus on people like progressive content creators. The Gen Z electorate is an electorate that the Democratic Party really needs to tap into and often relies on for those margins in key battleground states. College campus turnout drove the Biden-Harris ticket to victory back in 2020, even amidst a pandemic. Democrats are looking for a rejuvenated Gen Z base. And what we have found is that Kamala Harris so far has been polling better amongst young Americans than Joe Biden. And you also see that in new polling that has been done by Morning Consult, polling done in the past 24 hours, they're very quick on this. They did it after the debate. They do it after many different places. They find that amongst voters, Biden still trails Trump by 6 in the event that he did in fact stay in the nomination. Harris only loses by 2. And while Harris may be down, it gives far more room to grow. You can see that amongst women, she makes up the deficit of Biden being down. She ties it. Amongst men, she's down 5, Biden is down 12. Amongst voters of color, black voters, Kamala Harris wins by 54, Biden wins by 39. Hispanic voters, Kamala wins by 8, Joe wins by 4. You can see here in every metric, with the exception of Republicans, Kamala Harris outperforms Biden. Kamala Harris outperforms Biden. Let that ring through and through, because it is the concern that many mega donors and many people on the Biden side were worried would happen, is that Harris would not have a bump after the dropout of President Biden, and we find that the bump did in fact exist, and the bump will only continue
to be unburdened as we start to see more and more money. If you cringed at that comment, I fairly give that to you. I will stop doing that from here on out, leaving in those references here. But seriously, I mean, I look at this, trying to be objective about this. Kamala Harris raising $81 million. ActBlue raising over $113 million since the announcement that President Biden was departing from the race means everything in an election that will come down to the wire. Think about the 2020 presidential election. In a state like Wisconsin, where Biden only won by 20,000 votes, what do you think, we were spending in terms of each vote in that state? You're talking hundreds of dollars, and the reason for that is because Wisconsin is so exceptionally competitive, but it is so exceptionally close, 0.6%. But there were closer states. Think about Georgia. Joe Biden won by 0.23%. Out of 5 million votes cast, Biden won by 11,000. Biden won by 11,000 out of 5 million votes cast. Georgia was narrow. And why were Democrats able to win? Well, when you take a look at the fundraising advantage that Biden had over Trump, he out-fundraised Trump in every battleground state. More small donors from Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. Where did he win? Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. Where did he outspend Trump? Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. Where did he win? Those 6. And so you come to find here that money often talks. 90% of congressional races, the candidate that spends the most money typically ends up winning. 90%. I'd bet on a 9 out of 10 chance based on money alone. Now, congressional elections are different. Democrats often need to out-fundraise Republicans in order to win races, which is why it looks so grim that President Biden was under-fundraising President Trump. But now that has changed. And this has given the Democratic Party a huge, huge bump. Not only on the side of finances, not only on the side of enthusiasm, but in media coverage too. The thing that is lost on this all is that there is no longer any media conversations around President Biden's age. The Election 2024 page on the Associated Press is entirely about Kamala Harris. Just take a look at some of these new headlines. Harris wins Pelosi endorsement. A week ago, that would have been about Biden's mental acuity. Related coverage. J.D. Vance slams Kamala Harris. Harris gets a chance to press reset on 2024 race. Biden drops out of 2024 race. Well, of course, they don't expect them to cover what they talk about here with President Biden. I do think that the media very much, and not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, I do think there was a concerted effort to solely cover President Biden's age. Why? When you look at it from a lens of monetization, that gets clicks. When you look at it from a lens of talking about elections in a very gossipy way, entertainment value, Biden has dementia, Biden's not fully fit. You saw these things that used to exist on Newsmax and Alex Jones perpetuated by Politico. And that's not for me to say that that was wrong or right. But what it did do was change the media narrative to around Biden's age. The election became a referendum on Biden. And at that point, him, Joe Biden, Dr. Biden, his team realized that was the point of no return. And had the media not covered it, maybe we would be in a different position. But the media also, which serves to have a responsibility to cover what is relevant to the American public, and that is fairly put, relevant. It did damage to the campaign. But it took away when Kamala Harris went into this spot. Because as long as she doesn't choose President Biden as VP, that goes out of the window. All of the considerations, and guess what too? One thing that I think was so masterful on the side of the Democratic Party, which is why I think Democrats are really trying to line up here, because they know they need to lock the F in because the RNC just happened. Republicans just had 4 full days of all-time media coverage, 24/7 press pullers. Everyone was there. Everyone talked about it. Everyone was tweeting. It was all-consuming. RNC, 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 Kamala Harris. What did they talk about the RNC? Not Kamala Harris. They talked about Biden. And they tried to throw in Biden-Harris administration, fell flat. Why? Because people associate everything wrong with the president. Everything wrong with the president. Kamala Harris is not that. She benefits from the ability to distance herself from President Biden's, not even necessarily failures, anything negative. I think there are times where we could see President Biden failed on this. She is no longer associated because she can push herself away. She can now respectfully disagree with the president because she's not on a ticket with him, especially if a new VP nom comes up. Governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. Governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. Governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. They could reasonably say, I disagree with President Biden on this issue. I'm a new person. This is a new ticket. We're not running to just be Biden administration part 2. We're running to be Harris Shapiro. We're running to be Harris Bashir. There's an easy way, and Republicans have spent the past 3 years, gearing up against a rematch against President Biden, and it's not happening. So Republicans are terrified. I encourage you, if you're looking at this just purely from a point of which side has more political panic, for the entire past month, the Democratic Party has been in disarray. And while for a while I believed truly that the only way Biden was going to win, if he wasn't going to drop out, was with full and total unification of the Democratic Party, and I still think that holds true today, but if he was departing from the race, if he was removing himself from this situation, Kamala Harris stands to gain so much more in terms of polls. But that isn't the point here. The point here is that Republicans have spent so much time gearing up for this rematch. It's not happening, and now Kamala Harris brings in a whole new line of defense and offense. Republicans are going to try to play defense on different things. This has now become an election and a referendum on Trump, enthusiasm and excitement for Harris, and it's an election of a prosecutor versus a convicted felon. Democrats know they can do well in this. Democrats are now starting to see Gen Z, young people, turn back in their favor. And the data isn't suggesting that Kamala Harris loses ground amongst anybody but Republicans. And that's really it. Kamala Harris might have a reputation, as Joe Manchin might say, of being, quote, too far left, but really only amongst conservatives. That's why I think she loses support amongst Republicans. But everybody else thinks Kamala Harris is a step up from President Biden. The problem with Donald Trump's campaign is that despite all of these national leads, he never reaches a majority. Kamala Harris has room to grow because Donald Trump has had the 3 best months he has ever had in any presidential election campaign, and that momentum should have continued had Biden stayed on the ticket. Should it have continued, Donald Trump would be in a significantly better position today than in a month and in another month and in better places by the time we hit November. That is now put entirely to the side. Donald Trump freaking out, saying Democrats need to refund him with the money they raised because they were running against a different candidate. The Democrats are undemocratic because they're replacing somebody who hasn't won the nomination and hasn't been nominated. Democrats are receiving a lot of criticism from the right, but I don't think anybody from the center or the left agrees with it. And that's why you see this unification as a very, very important thing. There is no longer any news or conversation around an open convention with very limited exceptions. Joe Manchin, in an effort to stay politically relevant, called for one. Said Kamala Harris should not be the nominee. Me when I want attention, right? You don't do things like that unless you're fully aligned. Clearly everybody else is, but Joe Manchin isn't a Democrat anymore. He doesn't have that obligation to the party. Likely explains the decision behind that. Going on CNN, going on different places, and saying what he said, I'm not entirely shocked. Everyone else seems to have fallen in line. While 52 Democrats have so-and-so not endorsed, they aren't endorsing anybody else. They aren't saying that Joe Biden should stay in the race or that other Democrats should step in. In some cases, they ask for an open primary, but a lot of that has subsided. With President Biden's endorsement and people like Nancy Pelosi and many other top Democrats endorsing Kamala Harris, it's pretty much a done deal that Kamala Harris is going to win this nomination. In fact, labor unions are starting to unify behind Kamala Harris. They were all in for Biden, and now they're all in for her. She's rallying Democrats, and over 1,200 delegates have endorsed Kamala Harris. She needs just over that in order to clinch the nomination. That's impressive. That's strong for Vice President Harris. And in the truest sense, that allows her to earn the nomination without being coronated, without this, concerted effort to not allow anybody else in. It's clear nobody else wants to run, and Democrats also realize there is damage when you run in an open primary. This race should have no damage. Democrats are coming from a point where they've been given a Hail Mary. They don't want to set themselves back even further. They don't want to put themselves in a position where they are now losing by more than they were under President Biden because they have been given a lifeline. They have been given a lifeline in the name of a vice president in the sense that Kamala Harris chooses a VP, but it's also the VP. That there is so many new ways to navigate an election like this one that at some point, many donors, many celebrities, many Democrats believed was at a point of no return, that they were slow walking into a second Donald Trump presidency. Well, now they're backtracking, and Kamala Harris has turned this entire race to the left. And it looks like Kamala Harris will be in a better position in a week from today, in a month from today, in 2 months from today.
And it looks like things are on the up and up for the Democratic Party for the first time in almost over a year. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.